Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fully Charged. I'm Lorencino Estrada.
And I am Reno Del Toro.
This is an NFL podcast talking about breaking news, free agency, and fantasy football on the Fan Weekly. And Reno, we're continuing the top 100 list this week, and we're going with 80 to 71. We're starting to get into the mix. We're starting to get more into the middle. We're covering the players on the outside. Now we're moving in a little. Free agency, though, still underway. Still got some good signings. You know, we got Tyler Eifert re-signing with the Cincinnati Bengals. Just right now, Randall Cobb signed a one-year, $5 million deal with the Dallas Cowboys. Jake Ryan goes to Jacksonville. Ryan Fitzpatrick goes with Miami. So still some pretty significant signings for these teams down the line.
Yeah, especially these impact players. You talked about Jake Ryan, what he adds to Jacksonville. Another great linebacker. It's unfortunately last year he did get hurt, but Jacksonville gets a young linebacker who can play basically everywhere that they need him to play. He adds that defense with Miles Jack and linebacker, and of course Telvin Smith. So watch out for that linebacking core in Jacksonville. You talked about Randall Cobb signing with Dallas, another receiver for Dak Prescott to throw to. Unlike Terrence Williams in the past, they get Jason Wynn and then they get Randall Cobb. Add that to Amari Cooper and Zeke. That's gonna be a good team. Fitzmagic to Miami. Now this is kind of saying we're rebuilding. I think a quarterback will still get taken, but Miami needs to make some moves to get into the top 10 in order to get the two best quarterbacks in the NFL, unless Kyler Murray does fall and he does not go to Arizona at 1. Another big guy that got signed, Mark Barron to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He helps that middle linebacker spot that Ryan Shazier left from last season. Another quick linebacker for Pittsburgh. A lot of just big names, signing really, really soon. I mean, but there's still guys like Justin Houston out there. Jared Cook still hasn't been signed. These guys have yet to be signed, and it's kind of curious why they're still hanging around after the second week. But, all I can say is I'm glad Adrian Peterson did get signed to a 2-year contract because that man deserved it after last season performing. We already talked about him. He was number 100 in our top 100s list. So I'm glad that he got a contract. Glad that we're going to see Adrian Peterson for 2 more years in his Hall of Fame career in Washington.
Yeah, and also one that just came into mind, Blake Bortles, backup quarterback in Los Angeles now.
Yeah.
So there's that. TJ Yeldon hasn't been signed yet. Very good backup running back hasn't been signed yet. He is still out there. Now, Reno, this top 100 list, we're going to go ahead and start it off with a guy who got paid, and he is now going over from Baltimore to the New York Jets, and that's C.J. Mosley, who had an absolutely dominant year for that Baltimore Ravens. They had the second best defense, the Ravens did, this past season, and Houston was a big part of that arena.
Yeah, you talk about C.J. Mosley, Lawrence. You talk about C.J. Mosley, and yeah, I mean, he's been one of the best linebackers in the NFL for a couple of years now since he actually got into the league. You talked about him making plays, and he got paid because he made plays. That contract ended up being a 5-year, $85 million contract, with that making them average about $17 million per year, with 7.5 of that guaranteed for the bonus, for a signing bonus. But you talk about a guy that makes plays. It's C.J. Mosley. He is probably the best players that Ravens defense had. Now he goes to the Jets, and he's going to make a big impact right in the get-go because that defense is really young. That Leonard, I feel like this is the last year of the Leonard Williams experiment because that hasn't gone well in New York. So they need somebody else. They have Jamal Adams in the backfield, which helps them. And, of course, now you have Le'Veon Bell in offense for the Jets with Sam Darnold out there. So the Jets are making some ground. And adding C.J. Mosley was a big upside. I'm pretty sure they would have been happy if Anthony Barr ended up signing with the Jets. But he didn't. He ended up re-signing with Minnesota. But C.J. Mosley has just been that consistent linebacker that every NFL team needs. I mean, you talk about a guy that can make tackles, he's the guy. You talk about a guy that can make interceptions, another one. Sacks, he can do it all. He can do everything that you needed. Coming out of a first-round pick from Alabama, he's delivered so far in his time in the NFL, and I think he could have a breakout season in New York. New place, new home, probably what he needed, even though he's going to be in a different system of defense. But I like the signing the Jets made, and because C.J. Mosley has just been that dynamic player where he can go get you that 100-plus tackles a season. He can make some interceptions, force some fumbles. He's that guy. That's why he deserves to be on this list, Lawrence,
Yeah, he's a really good player. I'm really surprised that the Baltimore Ravens didn't even make an offer, or that there could have been some under the table things, some news that we didn't hear about, but it seemed right from the start of free agency that C.J. Mosley was gone, that he was no longer going to be with that Ravens team, and that's shocking to me, considering that he is a 3-time Pro. I mean, he's been to the Pro Bowl 4 times, 3 years in a row though. He's gone to the Pro Bowl. He's young at 26 years old. He is obviously the heart and soul of that defense. Once. They've always had good linebackers. Ray Lewis was there, and then Ray Lewis left, and then Terrell Suggs was here, and then it was now C.J. Mosley. So it was just, you would think that they would keep that going. They would try and re-sign Mosley, but instead they decided that they were gonna pay a safety, which in my opinion, Reno didn't even deserve that contract. He's old, first of all. Earl Thomas is, and he's coming off a torn Achilles. And that's very hard to come back from. And considering that they decided to pay him and let the young C.J. Mosley go, who really hasn't had a lot of injury concerns. This past season was really the first year where those injuries maybe racked up a little bit, and he was playing banged up throughout the year. But C.J. Mosley, he's definitely going to reinvigorate that New York Jets defense, because that defense needs. I mean, Jamal Adams, as good as he is, and he is a leader for that team, they need somebody who's gonna be there in the huddle with the microphone on, talking to his defense. And C.J. Mosley with Jamal Adams, that's going to be really fun to see. And it would have been even better to see if Anthony Barr signed with the Jets. I'm really ashamed that he didn't sign with them. But, I mean, we'll probably see New York address defensive end in the draft. I mean, they have the third pick in the draft this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
So they're definitely going to address it there. Reno, we're going back. We're going to go to the trenches now, actually. And we only have, in this 10, we only have 2 offensive players. And Zach Martin is arguably one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this a lot. You talk about offense. Offense wins games, and I get it. Defense wins championships. When we talk about the trenches, though, it's all about the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line, and Zach Martin's probably the best offensive lineman in the NFL. Since he came into the league in 2015, people were thinking, okay, Dallas, why you take another offensive lineman? They keep taking offensive linemen. It was Frederick, and then it was Smith, and they still keep continuing to take offensive linemen really, really high. But Zach Martin has been the guy coming out of Notre Dame. He's just been a stud. Last year he had some injuries, and it affected the Dallas Cowboys in some of their games. But he still played 14 out of the 16, was still in the playoff games. He's just a monster. No sacks go through his way. He doesn't allow, nobody to go near Dak Prescott, even before then, Tony Romo, when he was still there for his little tent. But since he's just been in the league, he's been a guy that, he doesn't allow anything to happen to his offense, his quarterback at all. Never has any penalties. He's always solid. He's only had 5 holding penalties his entire career. Since 2014, he's only had 5 holding penalties. He just in total he has 15 total penalties. So this guy's actually been really, really good. And let's not forget, he's made the first team All-Pro. He's made Pro Bowler. He's done it all. This last season, he was named first team from the Associated Press, second team in Pro Football Focus. He's just been the guy that has just done it all for the Dallas Cowboys. He is the leader of that offensive line. People still think it's, Tyron Smith at left tackle, but, Smith can't stay on the football field that much. And Zach Martin was that guy that was able to stay on the football field. And for many years to come, his presence alone will make the Dallas Cowboys good. That's why that offense is good. You just have to run behind Zach Martin, and everything else will be fine. And I'm telling you, when you have a guy that's that fast, who's 6'4", 315 pounds, that can block, this guy's just a stud. Zach Martin, ever since he came into the league, has just dominated the trenches for the Dallas Cowboys, and he'll continue to do so for the remaining of his career, and he will get paid. He will get paid more money later down in his career. But that's why he deserves to be 79 and probably, in my opinion, the best offensive lineman in the NFL today.
Yeah, I mean, offensive line is just such an important aspect of the game, if not one of the most important. Having your quarterback feel comfortable in the pocket is just, in my opinion, the key to success, especially when you get down to the playoffs. Because once the playoffs come around, everybody's tired, everybody's injured in some way, everyone's not feeling the way they are coming into the season. And when you can win in the trenches, then you control the football game, not only by running the football, but also through your play action passing and also just being able to keep the tempo and keep the defense on its toes. And Zach Martin, what he's done for Dak Prescott, I attribute a lot of Dak Prescott's success to having a guy like Zach. I mean, not only Zach Martin, of course, because the offensive line for Dallas itself is very good as a unit, but Zach Martin stands out from that unit. So I address a lot of Dak Prescott's success to Martin and also to having a very good running back in Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, without those two, we don't know where Dak Prescott would be. He might not even be in the conversation for having a $100 million quarterback. But Zach Martin is probably the best guard in the NFL, even though down the line we're going to talk about another guard who had an absolutely great season. Reno, let's stay in the trenches. On the other side, though, and when you talk about Danielle Hunter, this is a very young pass rusher for a very exciting and fast defense. And in the last episode, we talked about Unique Ngakoue and how he is going to get paid. Well, Danielle Hunter is also in that bracket.
Yeah, you talked about he is very young, only 24 years of age. That excites me when you talk about Danielle Hunter because he's actually been a monster since he's joined the Minnesota Vikings. This last season, he had 72 tackles for 14.5 sacks. Look at the detail. I mean, it's there. Look at it. For being a third-round pick, he's actually produced so much for the Vikings. It's crazy how much he brings to the table. He played all 16 games last year, and he was just a monster everywhere. It didn't matter where he was lined up. You had to stop Danielle Hunter, and he's probably the best player on that D-line. I know people are thinking, well, what about Linval Joseph? Like, he's a beast on the D-line, but you always have to look at the play of Danielle Hunter because he has some of the best bull rush I've ever seen in the league. I mean, you see guys that can get to the quarterback with that arm out and they swing out to the right. He's probably one of the best. He has some of the best legs in the NFL at that spot. You talk about some of the guys you mentioned. Unique Ngakoue is probably one of them. J.J. Watt's another one. The guys that can get to the quarterback are really good, and I think Danielle Hunter, especially that he's so young, could possibly be one of those guys like an Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack, who's going to change the game of football on the defensive side of the ball. That he's another player, another reason why defensive ends get paid a lot on defense. They get paid a lot, and they're also guaranteed contracts. And since coming into the league in 2015, he's just been dominating. He's had 40 sacks in his career. I mean, that's just amazing when you think about it. And he's had over 200 tackles. Combined tackles, I should say. He's just the guy to beat. And, sure, the production went down from one season, but still, he made plays on the defensive side of the ball. Another reason why that Vikings defense is one of the best in the NFL at all three levels. And Danielle Hunter is one of the key players that they need. And they need to lock him up because if they don't lock him up, I don't know. Whoever's going to get him is going to get one heck of a player who's still pretty young in his career. And I can't wait to see his fifth year because from the looks of this and looking at his stats right now, it looks like the production's going up and up and up and up. He stays on the field, he's going to produce. We saw him already hit 12 sacks and 12 and a half in 2016, and when he was only 22, he was 24 and he had 14 and a half. Offensive lines need to start double teaming him because he's just getting to the quarterback every year. And when you have 40 sacks in 4 seasons, that's a sign of a great player. Danielle Hunter is a great player.
Yeah, that's a pretty good average, 10 sacks per season. But you said the production went down. Production went up. He had an off year in 2017. He goes up, he doubles his sacks from 7 to 14 and a half. And they got to lock him up. He's locked up already. He's on that 5-year, $72 million contract. That's why he fits that bracket of high-paid defensive ends. And I keep going back to Unique Ngakoue because I'm a Jaguars fan, but seeing these contracts scare me because Unique Ngakoue is going to get paid. And if Danielle Hunter, who has more sacks than Unique Ngakoue, is getting the amount of sacks that he has, pass rushers, good pass rushers, first of all, are hard to come by, even though we see that recently these upcoming draft classes, they have been very heavy when it comes to defensive linemen. It's still very hard to draft one. It's still very hard to draft a starred defensive end. But Danielle Hunter has certainly done that and at a young age. And this is only his first Pro Bowl. Considering that he had 12 and a half sacks in 2016, this is only his first Pro Bowl. And I'm surprised that the production's up, because Everson Griffin was out for a good amount of the season, a good chunk of the season. because he was dealing with some off the field incidents, and within those incidents, within that, Danielle Hunter rose to the occasion, and he ended up getting the most sacks he's ever had in his entire career. He's definitely a good, bright, young player, and that defense is very good. That Minnesota Vikings defense, it superseded what that offense was, because offense was a disaster. If it was just, though, that defense, Minnesota's a very good team, and if they can fix those problems, what's going on in that offense, what's going on in that playbook, as they will with a new offensive coordinator, well, then Minnesota looks to be a very scary team coming to the NFC next season.
Yep.
Now, Reno, we're talking about defensive linemen because we love our defensive linemen here. And another player who really shined when it comes to the sacks, DeForest Buckner had 12 this past season.
He finally played, the way that he should have been playing since he first got drafted with the 7th overall pick in 2016. Let's be honest here. He finally came out of that shell, and he broke out this year. Props to DeForest Buckner because he, I think, made the biggest leap when it comes to progressing. He went from, having only 3 sacks last season in 2017 to having 12 sacks in 2018. He was just a wrecking ball over the field. To combine with those 12 sacks, he also had 67 of those combined tackles, with 23 just being assisted on. You talk about a guy that made, like I said, made that huge impact. It was this man. He brings so much to the table for the Niners. It's not even funny because you talk about all the young talent that they have. Some of them haven't really panned out. You talk about Foster, who got let go. You talk about Solomon Thomas, who really hasn't performed that well since arriving in San Francisco. DeForest Buckner was a guy coming out of Oregon like, is this guy going to be the next big thing for this Niners defense? We're coming off years where we had, Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis on our defense, and it led us all the way to the Super Bowl. We need to find that next cornerstone piece that we need on our defense to help us win some games. And sure enough, they found one in DeForest Buckner. Now, unfortunately, I have to say this. I've seen production from an NFL player be at its worst, from the next season being at its highest, and then falling really, really bad. That happened to Vic Beasley. Vic Beasley was, he had a terrible rookie year, then his production climbed up, and then all of a sudden this year it fell flat, where he was just getting outplaced in the rotation. I hope that doesn't happen to DeForest Buckner. We've seen it happen before with so many players, but last year, if he just continues to keep that consistency, and it doesn't even matter if he increases the sacks or he has a little bit less sacks, maybe down to like 9 sacks. In my opinion, that's still a productive year, going from 3 to 12 to 9. If he has that, and if you can add a little bit more tackles, because part of the defense is to get that pass rush to the quarterback. You need a little bit more tackles, in my opinion. Yeah, 67 is still good, but we'd like to see more out of that. But overall, he made the biggest jump this year, in my opinion, and he deserves to be on this list only because he improved so much, and he has the ability to become one of the best defensive players in the NFL, especially at his position. I can't wait to see more in this upcoming season. It's going to be another season where you really have to look at, how he's going to do it. It's for a season. So a high expectations so far in his career. So I would expect us being the 7th overall pick in the draft. But I'm really excited to see the future of DeForest Buckner. I believe he's going to do really good. But yeah, Zeno, I think this guy's going to be one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL for years to come.
Yeah, and recently, the Niners have just drafted a lot of defensive linemen. You got Armstead was the first one, then Buckner, and then Solomon Thomas. And it feels like a lot of them just get lost in the mix of things. And we don't really hear from them ever again. I haven't heard from Armstead ever since he got drafted. And I was thinking the same about DeForest Buckner as well. And all of a sudden, here comes DeForest Buckner, and he makes a Pro Bowl for the first time in his career. And so we're finally seeing the impact of these players. Maybe the fruits of their labor will come to fruition soon. But I really want to see how he's going to respond to this. Because you touched on it. Vic Beasley, literally the same thing. Yeah. It was the same thing. So I want to see if he can do it again. But he's a good young player. And that Niners defense is also It's young. That's the thing about this Niners defense. It's young. I talked about it last week. I really like the signing of Jason Verrett for that team. Yeah. So I think if they can put, if he's healthy, he's only had one healthy season. That one healthy season, he made a Pro Bowl. So if they can figure it out with these young players, because he's also young, Jason Verrett, and solidify that defensive line, which has 3 first-round picks on it, this can be a very good defense. And then when you got Jimmy Garoppolo coming back, I mean, this team can be good. Right. And the way that they have handled free agency as well, I mean, they're trending upward.
Yeah.
Now, back onto the offensive side of the football, another player. Alabama running backs, they don't really pan out, right? Eddie Lacy, well, we know that one. Trent Richardson, we know that one as well, right? Who are some other ones? I mean, Mark Ingram he's been good.
Sean Alexander.
Well, he's been good. I mean, he was a stud. I think he was a stud. T.J. Yeldon, backup running back. I mean, that's really all he is. Bo Scarborough is probably on a practice squad somewhere. I know he was on the Jaguars practice squad sometime this year. But Derrick Henry, we've seen all the memes, we've seen all the pictures. He's a really big dude. And this season, there was some problems there at first. The season started off a little tricky. They were trying to figure out this 2-back rotation, and then they finally handed the keys over to Derrick Henry, and he had himself a good year.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't understand why they went for that 2-back. I understand James White is a good. Not James White. What's the running back? Deion Lewis. He had another Patriots running back that was really good in the backfield. I don't know why they split carries. But towards that last month of the season, in December, it was a Derrick Henry show. Actually, you can say mid-November, he torched people up. He had over 1,000 yards, but he barely made it, though. He had 1,059 yards, 12 touchdowns on 215 carries. The guy was a monster like we said, at the end of the season. But his production really carried. You talk about some of his last games of the season, and I'm looking at him. That Week 15 game against the New York Giants, he had 33 rushing attempts for 170 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. Another game, I know you don't like talking about this one because you saw it with your own eyes, was the Jacksonville Jaguars game, where he ran for 238 yards, and he had a field day with the Jaguars with a bunch of touchdowns, which included that 99-yard touchdown run. And he basically put the Titans on his back for the last remaining of the season just for them to have that late playoff push, which they didn't make the playoffs. But he was a guy. It wasn't Mariota. We saw the injuries with him. They had to rely on the running game, and they had to rely on Derrick Henry. And from what he did from, I believe, that Jacksonville game down really shows you how good of a running back he is. Because, you look at the production. I'm looking at the numbers right now. 26, he had a game of 24, 21, 33, 27, 30. Like, these are not some of the numbers you want to see from a running back. And then all of a sudden you turn around with 238, 170, 84, 93, and he gets into the end zone a lot, too, during this time period. He had 4, 2, 1. He got it done. And he was a part of that. Like I said, he was a part of that push. And it makes me question the coaching staff's decision of, splitting the ball carriers, because me personally, I don't like having 2 running backs split. I know it's worked out in New Orleans with Kamara and Ingram, but guess what? It's not going to happen this season. I don't think that's going to happen. Latavius Murray, I don't think Latavius Murray is that good than Mark Ingram, but, some teams make it work, some don't. Tennessee's not that team that made it work. And Derrick Henry just proved to everybody why don't sleep on him, because he can explode whenever he can. He's going to be a guy that people might want to pick up in fantasy, but then again, it depends on how they run the system with him. They run it the way they should towards the end of the season. Tennessee is going to be a playoff contender. If they don't, I don't know about it. But Derrick Henry, overall monster last season, and he deserves to be on this list.
Yeah, and I'm looking at his 2016 and his 2017. They're not bad. They're not bad seasons. I'm talking total yards here: 627, 880, and then a little close to 1,100, or 1,200, close to 1,200. So these aren't bad seasons, but this was really where he put it all together. And you said those high carry games, where he gets the ball, 20 plus times. That's the type of back he is, And he really reminds me of those old-fashioned running backs, the ones that just took an absolute beating all the time. They were just going in. They're not trying to bounce it outside. They're not trying to be fancy with it or trying to finesse the defense. No, they're just going right up the gut, you know. And I like those type of running backs. You know, I have one of those running backs on my team, and the way that he has performed really is a good indication of how the Titans are gonna use their offense this next season. Because keep in mind, they got Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill as their quarterbacks. That's gonna be a training camp battle. Because Marcus Mariota has not proved anything, and Ryan Tannehill. Well, Ryan Tannehill is. We talked about. I don't think he's a good quarterback. You know, and there's going to be a fight, a training camp battle between those two, and whoever wins, they're going to have a lot easier job in 2019 because they have a running back like Derrick Henry leading the charge for them. So Derrick Henry had a good year. Melvin Ingram, had a better year than Joey Bosa. I mean, granted, Joey Bosa was hurt.
Right.
And it took him a little bit to kind of get into it. I don't even know if Joey Bosa ever really got into it, But Melvin Ingram had an absolutely dominant season, and the numbers don't indicate it. It's only 7 sacks. So, but the fact is he led this defense. And when your best, first of all, with Joey Bosa being gone, that just adds another layer because now all of a sudden you don't worry about the 2 pass rushers in Bosa and Melvin Ingram. With Bosa being injured now, it's, we have to send double teams to Melvin Ingram. It's kind of like the same problem that Houston had, right, with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney as well. So they've established themselves as one of the best, if not the best, pass rushing unit in the National Football League.
Yeah, you touched on it. He's been really one of the best players that the Chargers really have, but I don't understand why when you have Bosa, when you don't have Bosa, you think, the production's going to climb up for him, and it just didn't for him. I don't see why that happened. He went from 10.5 to 7. He didn't really force that many fumbles at all this season as well. He played all 16 games. He had less tackles. It was just a little off here, but because of his sheer given talent, he's still one of the best defensive players in the NFL. This guy can make a play when he needs to. Now, he's going to be 30. He's going to climb into his 30s. And that's a scary thing when you look at it because that little window, you like talking about the window. The window closes really quick in the NFL. 1 year you can be having a running back at 23 years old. Next thing you know, he's going to be 29. And you're like, wait, what happened to this guy? Melvin Ingram's going to be 30. And that window's closing for those two to have that tremendous pass rush. We saw that 1 year where both of them just wreaked havoc on both sides of the ball. And this last year, yes, Bosa was hurt, and you talked about it, Bosa really didn't get into the swing of things when he came back, and it hurt them because they ended up winning the playoff game, and it's terrible to look at that, but it's just the truth, age catches up with you, and that's the same thing that's probably going to happen with Melvin Gordon. I see that production going down. Still a good player, though. 7 sacks, still pretty good. One forced fumble, 28 solo tackles. Guy can still make plays. It's just, is he going to make the plays later down in his career? That's the main question. But overall, Melvin Gordon's a good football player, one of the best defensive ends in the NFL, and I couldn't agree more for him to make this list.
Reno, talk to me about Cameron Hayward. You know more about him than I do.
Yeah, I'll talk about big Cam Hayward for you. He's the leader of the defense of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, this guy wreaks havoc on the right-hand side of the football. He had 8 sacks last season, only 29 solo tackles, 1 forced fumble, but you need to put 2 guys on this guy. You know why? Because he can make plays. And I understand, yet again, that production it is declining. He's been in the league since 2011. He was 22 when he came in. Now he's 29. How funny is that? But he made a Pro Bowler. He was a Pro Bowler this year. Yes, he was. He had to replace somebody, but he still made the Pro Bowl. He is getting better. Last season, yes, he had a decline from that 12 sacks that he had last season to 8, but there was a changing of the guard in Pittsburgh and on defense. It's not, nobody has to do with secondary, but it went from Cameron Hayward being that top guy to now TJ Watt being that top guy. But Cameron Hayward still makes plays on the defensive side of the ball. He's the captain of the Steelers. We talked about the sacks, but he had more tackles than he did last season, which is good. You want to see that from a defensive lineman, especially when he had 51. That's what you want. He's getting to the quarterback as fast as he can. he had a lot of quarterback hits. He had 18 quarterback hits. So you look at his production, it's skyrocketed from the last probably 3 years, but we've seen it out of Cameron Hayward for the most part of his career. But like I just said with Melvin Ingram, age is catching up to Cameron Hayward. He is the best player on the Steelers on defense at the age of 29, which says a lot about this team because it's a bunch of young players. But overall, Cameron Hayward, if I had to describe Cameron Hayward, I would just say a hard worker because he is probably the only defensive player that I know who can come back from an injury one season and just ball out the next season. He puts the team around his back and he says, you know what, we're going to go after the quarterback and we're going to get this win. He's the guy, he's that leader that the Steelers need at this moment, especially with all the drama that's been going on now with the whole AB, Lev Bell thing, and Ryan Shazier being gone. This team rallied around Cameron Hayward, and, you know, his production on the field really, it shows because, you know, Pittsburgh doesn't have much. Everybody talks about how bad the Steelers' defense is, but the stat says otherwise, and the Steelers' defense is actually really good stat-wise, and most parts because that D-line is always a threat, and it's always led by Cameron Hayward around him. So, Cam Hayward, how can I say it the most? He's a baller. He is the Iron Man of the Steelers, and, of course, I can't wait to see what next season has to hold for him.
Yeah, he's a big-bodied guy, and, you know, those guys clog up the defense. They clog up the trenches, you know. Those are the ones that fill in all that space, and they make it a little bit easier for guys like T.J. Watt to come in and make the plays that he has. It's a lot of it could be credited to Cameron Hayward because when you have two guys on him, and I said that with Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa and J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney, who's next on this list, when that happens, guys go out there and they make plays. You know, that's why a guy from Houston like Whitney Merciless makes those plays, and then T.J. Watt makes those plays in Pittsburgh, you know?
Yeah.
So Jadeveon Clowney, Reno. First of all, I don't even know if this is right. I'm looking at Pro Football Reference, and they always have the nicknames of the players. Is his nickname really Doo-Doo? Is that a thing?
I don't know.
I feel like this is wrong.
I've never heard of someone just be like, hey, look, there's Doo-Doo.
It says Jadeveon Clowney, parentheses, Doo-Doo. But Jadeveon Clowney certainly hasn't played like it, Reno, because once again, he got the tag. You know, and that's a problem in of itself. But he's balled out, Reno, and he got 9 sacks this past season. And remember when a lot of people considered him a bust? I know I was one of them. I was saying J.J. Watt's a bust. Now, granted, he hasn't hit that 10-sack threshold yet that really, with a guy who's 25 years old going into 26 by the time the season starts.
He's 26.
Granted that, you'd think that he would hit the 10-sack range by now, but still, his production on the field is very good. And again, it's all about the 2 pass rushers now. It's like you need that to have a dominant defense, you know? Right. And because of that, you got J.J. Watt getting those sacks. It makes the offensive line confusing. It makes them, it's like pick your poison. You know, which one are you gonna take? Are you gonna take Clowney or are you gonna take J.J. Watt? Regardless, it's not gonna be good for you.
Yeah, I mean, we talked. I hate bringing this up because it's true. But Danielle Hunter's made more impact on the Vikings than Jadeveon Clowney has. I'm looking at the sacks. Clowney in his this is going to be his 6th season coming up. He only has 29 sacks, while Danielle Hunter, we talked about, he had 40. I mean, that's a big ratio. And this guy was the number 1 pick in 2014. He was the number 1 pick, and he only played 4 games that season. Yeah, I don't know what to think about Clowney anymore. I really don't, Lawrence. You know, we thought, especially I saw it when he bull rushed my Michigan offensive lineman and just totaled them in that Outback Bowl in Tampa. But ever since then, the hype's been surrounding him, and he just hasn't delivered. He delivered that one season in 2017, but he digressed this last season. He went from, he had that. He went from 9.5 to 9. Oh my God! But the tackles weren't there. You know, he didn't have that many assists, didn't have pass deflections at speed. I felt like he was just slow all year. I don't know, Lawrence, you know. I just don't know. He's 26, gotten franchise tag twice. He hasn't gotten that big payday. He's about to hit 27. Do you really want to pay him that big contract? Because I'm seeing the production, and it's not there for me. If I'm a general manager, I'd be like, well, yes, this guy, we bet all our chips against him because he was the first overall pick, and we wanted him so much, but the production's not there, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, you know, if he hits the free agent market next year outside of Houston, I am taking that risk on him. because I want to be able to have somebody who can give me that production on defense. And if I'm a team desperate for a pass rusher and I see him by the time he hits free agency, he's 27 years old, I'm saying this guy's still in his 20s, and the percentage of sacks have gone up. It's gone up, And yes, of course, I completely understand that. He should have 10 sacks, I mean, if he has all that potential and his ceiling is as high as everybody says he is, then yeah, let's get to those 10 sacks. But I'm still going for that. I'm still going for the potential. I'm still going to see whether or not I can tap into his ceiling, because I think we haven't really seen all of Jadeveon Clowney yet, because he's also injury prone. He gets injured quite a bit. So I want to see if he can put together a healthy season. Am I willing to? I'm not willing to break the bank on him, and I'm not trying to give him J.J. Watt money or Aaron Donald money or Von Miller money, but I'm still trying to give him enough money to where he can, first of all, come to my team and stay with them and make sure that we can solidify the defensive line. Yeah. Now, we said this was a heavy defensive list, this 10, and we have 2 more. And Big Play Slay from Detroit. He is one of my favorite cornerbacks, Reno. He's an absolute stud.
Yeah, come on, man. Give it up for Big Play Slay, man. The Pro Bowler this year for the Lions. He makes the plays when you need him to. He had 43 tackles this season, Lawrence. I don't know if that's a thing you want to have out of your corner. I don't think that's the case. But Detroit did a lot of upgrading. They added Trey Flowers to that defensive line, which big improvement. That defense will get better. And you still have Big Play Slay back there. He's going to hit 28 years old this season. Like I said, he made the Pro Bowl last year. He had 3 picks, still getting the job done. I mean, I don't think he'll ever replicate that 8-pick season that he had the year before in 2017, but 3 picks is still pretty good. He was just a monster last season. And to account, he's always that consistency with him. He's not going to give up the big play. He will get the big play. He'll get those picks, and I'm waiting to see what they're gonna do surrounding him, because I haven't seen him make a move to add another corner other than him. It's crazy. He makes plays probably with the top 5, probably 5th best corner in the NFL, and he doesn't get credit that much. Maybe because he plays in Detroit, and he doesn't get credit that much because he's such a good corner. And I hate seeing that, because when I look at some of the best players of all time, most of them come from big markets, and they get all the recognition. But these guys that are in Detroit or places like San Antonio, they don't get that much recognition. And Big Play Slay is one of the best corners in the NFL by far. Gets the big play, gets the job done, doesn't allow big yardage at all. He's lengthy, he's tall, he's everything you need in a corner, and he does even more after that. So, Big Play Slay, one of my favorite corners to watch playing. There's a reason why his name is Big Play Slay. He makes those big plays. And, of course, he is the man on defense for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, there's a really good NFL. It's not really an NFL film, but if you go on YouTube and just look up Darius Slay, it's by the NFL. It's really good. It talks about him with, his mom was I believe, I don't want to, say anything wrong here, but his mom was very young when she had him. And then all of a sudden he had kids when he was very young as well. It's a really great story, and it makes you really like the man in Darius Slay a lot, like you do with the player. But he's got that nickname for a reason, And last year, now yes, he didn't have as good of a season as last year, because last year he had 8 interceptions and he was a first-team All-Pro, and he was also a Pro Bowler. Now this year he only has 3 interceptions, but he is one of the least targeted cornerbacks in the NFL. And with the way that you said they added Trey Flowers, Detroit's making moves, and Matt Patricia is a defensive guy, so he's going to do everything in his power to put Darius Slay in the best situations possible. So Darius Slay right now at 27 years old, he is still there. He's still in the prime of his career, and I don't think anything's going to get better than the 2017 season with 8 interceptions, but he's always going to be one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL until he hits, his early 30s. But he is a very good player.
100%.
I feel like we breezed through this one, Reno. We're on our last guy, and he happens to be in your division, and he's just somebody who it seems like age doesn't really bother him, right? Tell me a little bit about Geno Atkins.
This guy can wreak havoc. He's always consistent, too, he had 10 sacks his last season. But look at the consistency, Lawrence. Tell me this. From 2015, he had 11, 9, 9, and 10. That's consistency. What more do you need from him? And he's getting better in age, too. He was 27 when that 11 sacks hit, and he's just improved. The sacks, again, he 42. I mean, the sacks and tackles. He had 42, 32, 46, 45. But that's what you need in a defensive lineman. I mean, that's the guy you need on your team. And Geno Atkins is that guy for the Cincinnati Bengals. There's nobody. Well, we mentioned William Jackson in the top 100, but other than that, it's probably just Geno Atkins. Guy's a baller. The guy can bull rush better than anybody in the NFL. Puts two hands on the guy and he almost falls over. I remember seeing that. I don't remember. I think it was DeCastro that almost felt that wrath. And DeCastro is one of the best right guards in the NFL, period. But Geno Atkins has just done so much since coming into the league in 2010 that it's crazy to think he's only he's 30 years old. And he's getting better with age. Come on, man. He even look at even the production here on the quarterback. It's 21, 26, 20, 19. That's something I need. But it's like I say every time I see the Bengals, it's terrible to see that they've made the playoffs 4 times and yet 0 wins. It's just terrible. And he's going on his this was his 5th consecutive Pro Bowl season. His 5th consecutive Pro Bowl season. He's made the Pro Bowl 7 out of his 7? What? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 7 out of his 9 seasons in the NFL. He's made the Pro Bowl. 7 out of 9. The only time he didn't do it is rookie year in 2010 and in 2013. The only reason why, he got hurt. But look, he's played every game in his career other than 2013 when he got hurt. He's played 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16, 16, 16, 16, 16. It's crazy. He's just on the field constantly. He's making production constantly. He's always consistent. And that's what you need at that position of defensive tackle. Geno Atkins is a dog. Probably one of my favorite players in my division other than my team. But it's always cool to see guys like Geno Atkins get credit for being a good player. And I think this is the perfect place for him right here, 71. I think this is the perfect spot for Geno. He's 30 years old, 71st best player in the NFL. At 30 years old, getting better like fine wine. Geno Atkins, big baller.
The guy doesn't say much. He just, clogs himself in the middle of any offensive line, and he puts in work. He makes Pro Bowls, and that's all you need. He's a veteran. He's teaching those guys on that defense, another defense, Cincinnati, that can be good. Riddled with injuries last year. Of course, Geno Atkins isn't one of them though, because he's built like a tank. He does everything right, and he's one of the best players in the AFC North. But he's also one of the best defensive players in the AFC and the NFL. It doesn't get talked about much. Right. So, Reno, next week we're doing 70 to 61. We're getting a lot closer to number 1. I'm excited the more we go deeper into this. Yeah. We're going down the rabbit hole talking about these really good, outstanding NFL players. And that's going to finish this week's episode of Fully Charged. Just remember that we have a Twitter that you can go follow. It's at Fully Charged Pod, and you can also go follow at The Fan Weekly. I'm Lorenzino Estrada.
I am Reno Del Toro.
And that was Fully Charged. Have a good one, everybody.